4 ways British and American people are very different. I'm excited to get into this one and see what's the difference between me and you. So yeah, let's jump straight to this and check out the 4 differences we got.
But in America, or at least in the Midwest, my attempts at toilet humour have often been met with TMI, which to my chagrin does not mean tickle me insane, but too much information.
Yeah, tickled in the toilet. Okay, nice.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to people. What could be more important to the foundation of a country than its people, except maybe tectonics? And one thing I can say about British people is we don't generalise, and that's why I'm doing a video called Ways British and American People Are Very Different.
Right.
Believe you me, everything you hear in this video is absolutely true, except this sentence. Because in truth, it's impossible
what was with the accent switch right there?
to get this video right. Both countries are made up of millions of people. No one person is the same, so some of the generalizations I'm about to make about Americans could be true of some British people and vice versa. It's just that on the whole, pound for pound or dollar for dollar, there are certain things that separate British people from Americans.
Right, okay.
And having lived in both countries now for at least 100 years, I'm here to tell you what those things are. Here are 4 ways that British and American people are very, very different.
Wait, is this like a big way that British and Americans are different? You move to America, you live longer? Is that what's going on here? You guys are living longer over there? Ancestral.
Funnily enough, the first entry on this list doesn't require any generalizations because it's backed by hard, cold science.
Okay.
And by science, I mean the census. Both countries have them. And from this data, we can determine the cultural backgrounds that make up the people of Britain and America. Let's take a look at each country's top 5 ancestral groups, starting with Britain. Actually, in this case, the entire UK. 37% of us are Anglo-Saxon, which accounts for how I'm 1,500 years old. 22% of people living in the UK are of Irish descent. And this is not just the 2% of people Anglo-Saxon, which accounts for how I'm 1,500 years old. 22% of people living in the UK are...
I thought, for some weird reason, I thought he said 50. I was going to be like, wait, half?
Of Irish descent. And this is not just the people living in Northern Ireland. Irish immigrants have been coming to Britain for hundreds of years, and if they hadn't, we wouldn't have had John, Paul and George. And the Beatles might have been named Ringo. A fifth of people living in Britain claim Western European ancestry. 9%, and I believe this minutely includes yours truly, come from a Scandinavian background, which is definitely why I'm so good at assembling IKEA furniture. 9%, and I believe this minutely includes yours truly, come from a Scandinavian background.
Oh, I should like do one of those websites where you get to see your own ancestry, because that'd be really cool. I'm really into like Vikings and stuff. So like if I'm like connected to them in some sort of way, next video you're going to be seeing me with like a Viking helmet or something. I don't know.
Which is definitely why I'm so good at assembling IKEA furniture. 4% of people in Britain trace their ancestry to Pakistan and India. In America, the numbers are quite different, but there are some surprises along the way. Did you know that in the United States of America, the largest ancestral group... I just said ancestral.
Oh, no.
Which is thankfully not a word, but you can quite imagine what it would mean.
Oh, no.
In the United States, the largest ancestral group is German. Apparently, 13.6% of Americans self-report German ancestry. And if you think that that dates back to either of the world wars, that's not entirely accurate. The majority of German Americans came here in the 19th century. So if you encounter any Americans with German sensibilities or facial structure, whatever that means, then that's why. And there's a good chance you'll encounter a German American in one of the cold states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, or the Dakotas.
That
is
good.
The second largest ancestral group in the United States are African Americans, who comprise about 12.5% of the overall population. And conversely to the German ancestry groups, the highest concentration of African Americans is in the South. And historically, of course, this is largely tied to the fact that many African Americans in the South are descendants of slaves that were kept and later freed. African Americans in the South are descendants of slaves that were kept and later freed from plantations.
Yeah, I've seen a video ages ago on this topic and how like it was all to do with the South.
There. And here's a demographic that sets America apart from Britain. It's largely governed by geography, and that's Mexican Americans.
That makes
11%
sense.
of Americans self-reported Mexican ancestry, which might account for why I read the other day that Cinco de Mayo is more widely celebrated in the United States than it is in Mexico. Mind you, you might be able to say something
what is Cinco de Mayo? What is Cinco de Mayo? What's that?
similar about St. Patrick's Day. Every March, without
Is that like a Mexican holiday or something?
fail, Americans turn green. Not literally, unless they've had too much alcohol that night. And so it's no coincidence that 10% of Americans self-report Irish ancestry.
Oh, wow.
Of course, if you're like me and you're 1,500 years old and an Anglo-Saxon...
Do you know what's interesting, right? Considering that Ireland is so small, smaller than the UK, right? They seem to be everywhere. Like, they are reproducing so fast back in the day. It must have been mad.
There's a very good chance that some Americans will be quick to tell you that they have a little bit of you in them. Not like that. I just mean a little bit of English, right? 7% of Americans self-reported English ancestry.
Wait, you're telling me there's more Irish ancestry than English? What?
That was an abbreviated look at the ancestral makeup of both countries. And for not having the time to discuss all groups in this one video, I apologise. But then that would probably be very British of me. Let's take a look at some of the unique tendencies of the people of both countries. If
Polite.
there's one thing that really sets people apart, it's how polite they are.
I already know where this is
and how fun they
going.
are at parties.
I already
And
know
don't
where this
worry,
is
I'm not
going.
about to extol the virtues of the famed British politeness while asserting that Americans are rude, because that's not my experience. There are rude people in both countries, but that rudeness usually manifests in a very similar way and wouldn't make for a very entertaining video.
Wait. Before he carries on, there's no way he's referring to the British as polite and Americans as rude.
Actually, mine. Can we put it on the list? The truth is, people in both countries know how to be polite when they want to. The difference here is the manner in which they do it. In my experience, British people will go to greater lengths to let you know that they're listening. What do I mean by this? Well, you're talking to me. Not literally, you're watching a video, but let's say you are talking to me. You're conveying very important information right now. And so in between every single word, I'm going to go, yes, 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 yeah, oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. I'll stop now. That's essentially the way it goes. As a result, the conversation ends up being twice as long, and all of those efforts to display that you were listening meant that you didn't hear a bloody thing. British people are very good at that, and I should know, because I'm very good at that, aren't I? Right? We're also good at adding on tag questions. That's when we make a statement, but in order to not appear confrontational, we add on a little question at the end. So, for example, Marmite is brilliant, isn't it? Americans would never do that. They'd simply state Marmite is awesome. That's never going to happen. I remember when I visited home last year and we were in a restaurant and the staff apologized profusely to my wife because I can't remember why, but I remember it not being warranted in the least. The point is, British politeness is often governed by the need to save face. That's not a reference to the A-team. Don't get me wrong, it's also about being friendly, but in America, I think that's all it's about. I very rarely feel like Americans are trying to let me down gently. They just tell me I suck outright.
Yo. This is surprising me a lot. Because from what I've seen or what I've heard, I haven't been in America. So I obviously don't know, right? But I live in the UK and I know in the UK people are rude. They are more rude than polite. I'm telling you right now, people in the UK are more, you're going to come across more rude people than polite people. 100,000%, bro. Grumpy, moaning, rude, right? That's why people stay to themselves. People don't, like, unlike America of what I've heard, people don't really communicate with strangers and stuff, right? Or like just say like the odd hello and stuff. Because people are rude, bro. And I've heard that Americans and the Americans that I've came across, like you guys in the comments, are really, really nice, really polite. I've done content creation for like 5 years, right? I've never received the amount of like support and nice messages that I have from you Americans in my like emails, my DMs, I've never. So from my experience, right? Americans are so much more polite and nicer than the British people. I'm surprised.
Joking, it could be argued that Americans in this sense are just more practical, much like their dress sense.
I'm very surprised with that.
It's hard to talk about people without talking about the clothes they wear. For example, when have you ever seen me without clothes? No, those videos were taken down about 4 years ago. Not by me, by YouTube. On the other hand, it's almost impossible to paint an accurate picture of the clothing
Yeah, what was he doing back in the day on YouTube, bro?
choices of both countries' populations. But there are some clothing items you'll see preventing people being naked in one country and not the other. That was really poorly worded. So in America, people might, for example, be recognizable by the fact that they're wearing a flannel shirt, particularly in some of the northern states which have extreme cold, and Germans. Moreover, Americans are more likely to wear sweatpants in public. The sweatpant people, which is an ancestry group that I forgot to mention, sometimes meet up at the gym, but more often Walmart. In Britain, we all just dress like Charlie Chaplin. At least the Charlie Chaplin impersonators do, but there's an emphasis in Britain on style. And this is a luxury that we can afford because, unlike America, we don't have weather that can kill bacteria. So depending on where you are, it might not be that unusual to see, say, a woman dressed more or less like Kate Middleton, and that includes Kate Middleton. Of course, we're talking cheaper versions of Kate Middleton.
Right, of course.
Or at least I am. Now, before I get carried away, I do not want you to get the impression that all British people are super stylish, right? I'm doing this video in my own
Yo, they're not, bro. They're not. A lot of people, how do I say this nicely, are not looking good, bro. You walk outside and they're not looking good, bro. I'm telling you.
The thing I would say is that our casual clothes, or
maybe I just live in the wrong area,
or our comfort clothes, tend to be less baggy than they are in the United States. And we probably wear fewer baseball caps and more polo shirts. I told you British people like me don't like to generalize. I think in America, baggy clothes are more accepted because A, there are harsh winters, and B, Americans place more emphasis, I think, on comfort. That's why you'll see Americans way into their 70s still wearing sneakers with jeans. My grandfather-in-law did that all the time, and I think if you saw that in Britain, that person would be considered eccentric, which, since we're talking about Britain, 50% of the population is eccentric. And if you thought that that observation was funny, then you're very easily amused.
Humor.
You put the U in humour, especially if you're British. You may recall a while back I did a video on British versus American humour, but this focused on the televisual differences. Today, we're talking about people. There have been numerous times in my life when I've laughed my absolute arse off in the company of both Brits and Americans, to the extent that I can no longer comfortably sit down. But it's hard to deny that British people have a different sense of humour to American people. It's also a little hard to define what that difference is. Americans often write in the comments that they love my dry British humour, and
apparently, Americans struggle. I could be wrong, but let me know. Americans struggle to understand like British sarcasm. Apparently, they really struggle. Like, you think we're being serious when we're being sarcastic? That's what I've heard anyway.
I always find it amusing that we have dry British humour, because we also have wet British forecasts. But when you're talking to a British person, there are two ways that the humour can go. Either that politeness that we talked about earlier goes out of the window and gets rained on, or there arises something known as self-deprecation. In the first instance, a good friend of mine might jokingly remark, "All right, Lawrence, you wanker." I don't know too many Cockney people. Or in the second case of self-deprecation, a British person might say something like, "I'm Lawrence and I'm a big wanker." That is a terrible example. It's basically when people put themselves down for comedic effect. It's a powerful tool, but it's not a tool often wielded by Americans who, I don't know, maybe they see it as a weakness. I've also found that Americans are less into their toilet humour, and that maybe that means they're more mature. It does mean that, doesn't it? The sweatpant people notwithstanding. Whereas toilet humour is basically how British people communicate. Of course, this was once successfully parodied by Mike Myers, the comedian, not the serial killer.
Oh my
God.
God.
In America, or at least in the Midwest, my attempts at toilet humour have often been met with TMI, which to my chagrin does not mean tickle me insane, but too much information. On the other hand, I think your average American is pretty good at wielding observational humour. A favourite weather-related saying, and I've heard this in various states, is, If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes. And they've got a point. Left my laundry hanging outside this morning.
Wait, would that be like, is that like a joke he's heard in America? That's a joke?
Nadeau took it away. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below.
To be fair, my favorite comedians are Americans, so I definitely do like the comedy in America. But then again, the UK has quite a few good comedians as well. Hey, we're both just funny, just in different ways, you know what I mean?
If you've observed some of these characteristics of British and American people, and if you want to hear/read more from this British...
That was a really interesting video. I enjoyed that. Make sure you guys let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If you guys enjoy, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe for more content. I'm live every single day on twitch.tv/L3WG if you guys want to check that out. I've also started uploading to my other channel. The link is in the description as well. The channel is called L3WG. I'm going to be uploading like funny videos on there, more like idiots in cars and like funny shows and comedians and stuff. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you check that out as well. It'll be really good to get that channel going as well. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.